Hi everybody. Even remotely, I appreciate the invitation to participate. Today we will focus on the legal aspects of cybersecurity, which does not mean that we will get bored with laws, but we will give a brief tour to some of the concepts, principles, and main problems on the legal framework applicable on cybersecurity. So let's start. Certainly, in the course of the talks and conference, much has been talked about cybersecurity. Today, I want to ask you some questions. The first question is, why do we have to worry about cyberspace? Think a moment before answering. Imagine your role in the internet ecosystems as users, consumers, or personnel involved in any of these aspects. The risks and threats in cyberspace are some of the main priorities of individuals, corporations, or governments, because the incorrect use of this critical infrastructure can lead to real threats to the economy, innovation, development, and our security. The theme of cybersecurity combines political, social, industrial, economic, technical, and operational interests that combine public and private, cyber, and military commitments to the users of ICT by different actors for different purposes. The threats and incidents of digital security have increased in recent years, which has had important economic and social consequences for public and private organizations, as well as for people. Some examples include the interruption of operations, direct financial losses, lawsuits, damage to reputation, loss of competitiveness, as well as loss of customer confidence. Due to the rapid growth in number and sophistication, cyber attacks are positioned as a critical threat to national security and one of the greatest risks facing nations today. In its report Risk and Global Trends 2018, the World Economic Forum has recognized that at a technological level, cyber attacks and fraud of massive theft of data constitutes one of the 5 main global risks perceived by countries. The other are critical infrastructure breakdown, risk, cyber dependency, and adverse consequences of technological advances. As I had anticipated, today we will focus on the legal aspects of cybersecurity. For this, we will begin by making reference to some basic aspects. The content of this presentation is distributed as follows. First, we will make a brief reference to 2 basic concepts, cyberspace and cybersecurity, to then continue with the legal aspects. Cyberspace, terminology and characteristics, cybersecurity, terminology applied to cybersecurity, and finally, a legal framework of cybersecurity. There is no single definition of the terms cyberspace and cybersecurity, much less an harmonized one. Even the use of the term cyber as a form of combination or as an adjective is used to exemplify different issues. In this sense, the first step to know about the norms of cybersecurity is to understand what these 2 connectors mean, and from there, lay the necessary foundations in order to be able to protect the networks of the present and future. Another concept that we relate is the Internet. And what is the Internet? We have a definition of the Federal Network Council, refers to the global information systems that, and is logically linked together by a globally unique address space based on the Internet Protocol or the subsequent extensions followed on. Is able to support communications using the Transmission Control Protocol Internet Protocol. So we have here the first harmonized definition of Internet. The Internet is not cyberspace, and the World Wide Web is not cyberspace. So, what is cyberspace? Cyberspace is a set of links and relationships between objects, excessive thought, and generalized telecommunications network, and the set of objects where they present interfaces that allow remote control, remote access to data, and their participation in control actions within that cyberspace. Then cybersecurity refers to the security of cyberspace. This could be a simple definition of cyberspace and cybersecurity, but in the practice, it's a bit more complicated. In practice, we have different notions and definitions, which come from different sectors. For example, from a technical approach, we have the International Telecommunications Union, we have the International Organization of Standardization, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology NIST. So each one has his own cyberspace concept. Cyberspace is an electronic world, a global common space where people are united to exchange ideas, services, and even friendship, as it is referred on the Canadian strategy. It also constitutes a nervous system, which controls the countries and the critical infrastructure that sustains them. Its healthy functioning is essential for the economy and national security, as in the case of the United States. It is even considered that it's a global digital environment constituted by a computer and telecommunications networks in which people communicate and interact, allowing the exercise of their rights and freedoms, in the same way that they do in the physical world, as we established in Mexico's National Cybersecurity Strategy. Cybersecurity is going to deal with the security of this cyberspace. We can interpret the term according to the concepts oriented by the technical community and by employees by national cybersecurity documents. One of the most complete definitions, I believe, is that granted by the International Telecommunication Union, when the properties of the information stand out: availability, integrity, and confidentiality, which in turn appear in other definitions. In the case of ISO, a distinction is made between the term cybersecurity and cyber safety, and you can see in the image. The NIST also gives a definition of cybersecurity. In the same way that the technical community provides its definitions, countries do so, based on their definition of cyberspace and what they want to protect. Definitions that we see embodied in their national cybersecurity strategies, which serve as a guide for governments to manage risk and know their vulnerabilities, while trying to promote the benefits in a hyper-connected and cyber-enabled world. Even in several countries, the development of national cybersecurity strategies has become a national policy priority. The cybersecurity strategies or national cybersecurity strategies involve plans and actions taken to facilitate the achievement of national competitive advantage around cybersecurity. They constitute a plan of actions designed to improve the cybersecurity and resilience of a national infrastructures and services. These documents articulate an approach to cybersecurity adapted to a specific national or legal context. In this sense, the implementation of the strategies must be accompanied by a planning in the development of technology as well as the development of skills and human capital to work for it. Just as there is no single definition of the terms cyberspace and cybersecurity, there is no single strategy that can be followed, given the characteristics of each country. However, within them, we can identify common themes, which in the end do not make us so different. This includes cooperation, international and national, the protection of human rights, as well as risk management. We also find some common principles around cybersecurity, again attending to what we want to protect. For example, in the cybersecurity strategy of the European Union, we can find the protection of fundamental rights, access for everyone, democratic and efficient governance, multi-stakeholder model, and a shared responsibility to guarantee the safety. For example, the International Chamber of Commerce, in their key security principles, they focus on the information, not on the technology. Make resilience in mindset, prepare to respond, demonstrate a leadership commitment, and act on your vision. Another point to consider is the implementation of the multi-stakeholder model of Internet governance in cybersecurity, which implies that each stakeholder knows their role and responsibility, in addition to encouraging collaboration between peers. In Mexico, the multi-stakeholder model constitutes one of the principles of the implementation of the National Strategy on Cybersecurity. We consider that in this matter, we all have different but complementary roles. For this reason, the importance of cooperation. In the above, we will now analyze how the legal framework around cybersecurity is shaped, making reference to the need for a right of cybersecurity or cybersecurity law. Before doing it, I want to specify that in either of the two, the collaboration of experts in different areas is required. Today, more than ever, collaboration from the technical and legal sectors is necessary, not only for, if necessary, the issuance of laws that guarantee not to go against innovation and development, but also for the confirmation of standards that constitute the technical aspect of the law. Before starting, it should be clear that cyberspace is not a domain without law. Cybersecurity does not fall into a single set of rules. Unlike other legal areas such as civil, commercial, or family law, the legal framework that involves cybersecurity is dispersed in various legislations. That is why sometimes it seems that cyberspace is a place without domain. However, the lack of hard law does not necessarily mean the lack of security measures and regulations. Notwithstanding the above, cybersecurity legislation is independent in most countries. It spans over espionage, political and economic, information security of countries, privacy and data protection of individuals, cross-border trade and investment in ICT, and cross-border criminal enforcement. We can group these laws into the following categories: domestic law security requirements, criminalization of certain cyber activity, and protecting national security interests. At international level, we have some resolutions of sub-organisms. For example, in the Declaration of Geneva Principles, it is recognized that a society of information focused on the person, integrating and oriented to development, in which everyone can create, consult, use, and share information and knowledge, so that people, communities, and peoples can fully use their possibilities in the promotion of their sustainable development and in the improvement of their quality of life, based on the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations, and fully respecting and defending the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In this regard, the group of governmental experts of advances in information and telecommunications in the context of international security, in its 2013 report, reaffirmed that international law, in particular the Charter of the United Nations, is applicable and fundamental to maintaining peace and stability and fostering an open, safe, stable, accessible, and peaceful environment in the field of ICT. In the legal framework, we can find directives, national strategies or policies, frameworks, good practice codes, and ethical regulations. For example, the European Union Directive of the Security of Networks and Information Systems, known as the NIS Directive, that took effect on Italy on June 26 of this year, aims to raise level of overall cybersecurity and resilience of network and information systems across the European Union. It focuses primarily on regulating so-called operations of essential services and providers of digital services. Most provisions of the NIS Directive are already implemented in Italy through the National Cybersecurity Framework of 2014 and the National Plan of Cyber Protection and IT Security of the past year. In some cases, cybersecurity is often conflated, particularly in legal circles, with data security. Although data security is an important part of cybersecurity, it is only one part. Cybersecurity focuses not only on the protection of data, but also on the systems and networks of the public and private sector. In other words, cybersecurity involves more than merely the protection of data. So we can find human rights, internal laws, international relations, intellectual property, telecommunications laws, also national security and defense, criminal legislation, and international and national technical standards. For example, we have treaties too. The Convention of Cybercrime, or Budapest Convention, is the first international treaty on crimes committed through the Internet and other computer networks. Copyright, computer fraud, child pornography, and network security violations are involved. It provides a legal basis for the investigation and prosecution of cybercrime. The main objective of the Convention is to pursue a common criminal policy aimed at the protection of society against cybercrime, especially through the adoption of appropriate legislation and the promotion of international cooperation. Once analyzed the legal framework around cybersecurity, we can ask ourselves if we need a specific cybersecurity law. How can we define it? I share an example. Cybersecurity law promotes the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of public and private information, systems, and networks through the use of forward-looking regulations and incentives, with the goal of protecting individual rights and privacy, economic interests, and national security. To be able to combine a cybersecurity law, we need to answer some questions, which we saw at the beginning of the presentation. First, what are we securing? Where and whom are we securing? How are we securing? When are we securing? And why are we securing? Of course, the definition will be as diverse as those that exist in the cybersecurity and will be based on the nation's currently cybersecurity threats. Cybersecurity law must incorporate the national cybersecurity interests. However, identifying the threats and concepts of each country will result in the formulation of a different law in each one. We must consider that cyberspace is a global and its security concerns everyone. However, a clear definition of cybersecurity law is necessary for lawmakers, regulators, courts, and commentators of offer discussions to these ongoing threats. And why do we want a secure cyberspace? What are our goals? To name a few, we want a cyberspace that is accessible, open, trustworthy, interoperable, peaceful, and safe. And remember, cybersecurity is multi-stakeholder. Everyone is involved. As well as cybersecurity is not a passing trend. It's not a passing trend because the more people depend on the internet and the more people will defend that the network is secure. A secure network protects our rights and freedoms and our ability to exercise economic activities. The time has come to coordinate our action. The cost of inaction is much higher than that of the action. Thanks again for your attention. I share my email for questions or comments. Greetings from Mexico. Goodbye.